All right, so this meeting's being recorded. So we have the agenda in front of us. I entertain a motion for an approval of the agenda.
So move. Second.
All right, made and seconded by Curtis and Tom. All in favor, Curtis?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Bo? Jill?
Yes.
Aye. Caroline?
Aye.
And Jeff says aye. So carry on. I know minutes got distributed kind of late, so I think we'll carry those over to next week. So without further ado, I think we'll take the moment to introduce Mark Ells, the Barnstable Town Manager. He's kind of the main point of our agenda today, to come on and talk to us about Barnstable and how they function. I know Curtis took the time and we tried to distribute kind of a list of questions in advance to review. Sorry, I have a little technical difficulty on my end, bringing those back up. So without further ado, if you could take a second, Mark, to maybe introduce yourself and say hello, that'd be great.
Oh, of course. Mark Ells, Town Manager of Barnstable. Thanks for asking me to, join you all. And I did receive the question. So, I don't know how you want me to proceed relevant to it. I've been going into my 9th year in Barnstable as Town Manager, but I've been with them for 35. I joined Barnstable as an engineer years ago in its DPW and spent 21 years there, and then the last 14 here in the town manager's office as the assistant and now the town manager. I came in under a selectman administrative form of government, and then in 91 we went over to a town manager, town council form of government. We've seen it's a representative at large. I'm sorry, by precinct rather. There are no at large. So I've seen various numbers of councilors over the years. They've changed that. Right now I have 13 town councilors that serve as a legislative body. So they all represent, based on population, a precinct within the community, but their role is both by precinct and then the town as a whole. So, and there's lots of different ways that we see different communities across the Commonwealth kind of divvy that up. So I only give you a snapshot of Barnstable and what I've been doing here in Barnstable. And so did you want me to go through your questions, or do you want to ask them, or what serves you best here?
I think we're happy. Just real quickly, Rachel Mandel, one of our committee members, just hopped on as well. Just to acknowledge that. I think if it's easier for you, Mark, we're happy to let you kind of run through those. I think those are a good set of questions, and then you can kind of just go as you go. And maybe if it's all right with you, if we have questions along the way, if we can just interrupt real briefly and get our question out there and have kind of a free flowing discussion.
Absolutely. And feel comfortable with whatever works best for you. And if it's something I can't answer, or like I said, I can either email it back, or I can come back and do this, in the future with you if you think it's worthwhile. So an overview. I gave you a little bit of an overview already about how town council form of government works in Barnstable. I could go back. I did not at this point, but I could go back and look at a charter committee that was created, and ultimately recommendations from the community that ultimately resulted in the community voting to move in 90 from the selectman town administrative form of government to a town council, town manager form of government. And in 91, our first manager joined us. His name is Warren Rutherford. Warren's still out there. Certainly I could reach out to him if you're also interested in talking to somebody who stepped into a transitioning form of government, because I see some of your questions are related to that in a sense, and it is a significant transition. So how does it work? Well, basically the council serves as a legislative body, the manager serves as the administrative. The powers and duties, delegation of authority is all spelled out within the charter very clearly. Basically town council sets policy, approves budget, hires the manager. The manager is delegated the more tactical duties, as I would describe them, meaning implementation of an approved budget, capital or operating. Um, Oversight of all employees, right from hire, collective bargaining, um, all aspects of managing the workforce, all aspects of managing the assets. So basically, the council truly serves as a legislative body. We're very cognizant of not stepping into each other's lane, though it happens. And my observation of it, being here from the day it started till today, is that typically that's a bad thing, and it ends badly for the town manager when that occurs. So regardless of who does it, that is never a good thing. The town manager really is tasked with making sure communication works, making sure that from a functional standpoint, the government operates as it's supposed to per the charter. So, you have to have a good working relationship with the council. And when I've seen that not be the case, shortly thereafter, there is usually a change on the administrative side. So that's really important to think about. I mean, you guys have a great community, and I know Libby very well and have worked with her for at least 15 years. Um, I'm very familiar with many people in your local government, and I know that you're a very unique location, not unlike Barnstable, um, but a very unique location with a high quality, high expectations and quality of life for those who live there, visit, and do business. So it's really important that your government work well. So in general, that's how it works. We do have, and I read a little bit into this, but not a tremendous amount. So certainly you may need to seek advice from others relevant to county versus municipal. We're completely separate. So they function completely separately, though Barnstable is kind of the center of almost everything activity-wise, whether it's education, healthcare, commerce, with the largest community, transportation, health, just basically we're the center of everything. So therefore, we interact kind of on a grand scale with Barnstable County government, whether it be the formal government or whether it be the Cape Cod Commission, which really is the planning agency and arm of the county. And but they're completely separate. And so that there is no transition. They were separate before when we were a selectman administrative form of government, and they are separate now. We have a good working relationship with them, certainly. We interact regularly. We have a Cape Cod Commission representative, the same as every other community, not weighted, just same as everyone else, on the commission. And then certainly the assembly has a Barnstable rep, as every other community does. So, but I won't get into the county side. They're completely separate. So I really don't have a lot to say other than they are our county agency. We work with them on any and every issue that we need to. But the lines of authority and the kind of the legal way that they're created is completely separate from us. What else was there here? I think I touched on, we have a large planning and development department. It's separate from the regional planning agency. When I do observe other communities, we tend to use our regional planning entity a lot less because Barnstable is a lot bigger, both in government staff, in many cases, whether it's our infrastructure or our, square miles or, we're double the size, if not more, than every other community on Cape Cod. And then we play that kind of regional center. I know I didn't realize as town manager in Barnstable how significant we are for the Commonwealth. Kind of right behind Boston and Worcester and Springfield and Barnstable. And I never thought of us that way, even when I was a director of a department. But having spent a lot of time up in Boston, I realize that now. So we have that different dynamic as well. Not real, Nantucket's different, but not at the same scale, but certainly in a unique way you are for the Commonwealth. But it's always important, we're in a business of public service, customer service, whether it be in our case, councilors are elected by the community and represent the community. In my case, under the charter, the town manager works for the town council. It is very clear. And many people don't really understand that. They actually kind of think it's like a mayor. It's nothing like having a mayor in your government. We are truly the professional managers of the organization. We are the administrative, not the legislative side of it. I work for the council. So many times what will happen is the public won't understand that and think that I control legislation, policy, boards, committees, commissions that are appointed by the town council, basically the weather. I control everything. And in fact, that is not the case at all. So there's a lot of time spent with our public explaining, and many times it depends on where they come from, and you probably have a real diverse group of people who come in from all over the place and bring their experiences. So if they came from a selectman form of government and you went to town manager, town council, they would reference selectmen. If they came from a mayor, they'd reference that. So if they come from a different part of the country and they have real strong county, they would reference that. So I find myself in a lot of discussions, both with our leadership in council and with our public about this.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How does the legislative act get started then if you don't do it?
Legislative, so legislative acts come from the town council, but when it's functioning well, the town council relies on their professional staff, in most cases, to provide support for, let's say, zoning issues or Board of Health issues or capital project issues. So we have a working relationship, a constant effective communication. And when that is the case, it works really well. When it's not the case, we are not as functional. So yeah, the town council and the town, like I just had somebody yesterday say to me, why didn't you put that on the agenda? And I said, the town manager has absolutely no authority over town council meetings or what goes on the agenda. Even when it's legally required, I have none. I bring it to the president of the council. In the case of our form of government, there's 13 councilors. Annually, they elect a president and a vice president. The president presides. They set the agenda. Now, they discuss it with me. We have weekly meetings, significant meetings. I probably meet with my leadership, and I've had 7 different town council presidents over I'm in my 9th year again. Trying to think prior to that as the assistant, how many were a couple back then. So, but regularly, I would have to say we meet weekly. Right now, I probably meet for 4 hours on Wednesday mornings, and we talk through all of this stuff in detail. Because then we go out and implement on the management side. We want to make sure we're doing what our elected body expects us and wants us and prioritizes us to do. Now, it's all as a follow-up to all the plan, how much planning we all do, certainly in local government, and our budget documents are maybe capital and operating are two of our, primary guidance documents on a tactical level. I mean, on an annual level, as to how we proceed. And I want to be talking with our council to make sure that we are constantly in sync with one another. I mean, a quick example of that is right now we're looking at water, future water, public water supply. And Barnstable's a big town, 64 square miles. And we have 7 villages. And the best place, if you think about it, makes complete sense. The best place to put your water is where you don't live on top of it. And so West Barnstable would be that. But historically, Hyannis hasn't been served by wells from West Barnstable. So this has created quite a stir in town, meaning you're going to take the water in West Barnstable for Hyannis. And so the past council, and we've had a huge change this last November in our town council, past council said, absolutely, that is absolutely the way they do it. I mean, look at Boston. They go 120 miles to the west, to the Quabbin, and they get their water. They don't take it from under the city or under any urbanized area. Why would we be looking for future wells in Hyannis? So we began looking. The village, and you asked in here later about fire and water districts. Yeah, Barnstable's even a little more unique in that we don't have any fire departments that fall under our municipal government. They are all separate authorities created by the state of Massachusetts. Within each of those, all of them except Hyannis have a water district as well. So it's fire and water. And my best understanding of that is that, because of the fire, fire response and need for water, it was logical that the water provision be linked to the fire department back 100 years ago when that was created. So, except in Hyannis, where it was a private company until 2005, literally a private company provided the water to Hyannis. And we do have a separate fire district. So, and then the town in 2005 bought the private water supply because the private sector had run it to the end of its useful life, and there were major problems, quality and quantity. And so the town stepped in and bought it. But point being, those are separate. One of the questions was, well, how do you tax? They set their tax rates. We have nothing to do with that. They do it through their district and the authorities that district has under state law. And all we do, though, is incorporate it into our tax bills. And so you get your town tax, you get your district tax, you also get CPA tax on there. And that's what goes out in the tax bill. But we have no, besides putting it on the bill, collecting it, and then distributing it back. And we did that just to do it to keep the costs down for the districts, try to help them out, try to all work together. But the issue I started with was past council had said, yes, we want you to go look everywhere in town for water. Well, now we're on the verge of a lawsuit with the district because they're saying, no, we don't want you to take that water. We might need it. So what do? We're well into, hundreds of thousands of dollars into study on this. You pause, you sit down with leadership, you have a conversation, you get together with the district, you step back, you talk about it again, and then you bring it forward. Maybe it'll be different, maybe it won't. That's the sort of, when you're thinking about this sort of, and probably what you do isn't unsimilar in selectman administrator, but you got to be really careful as to how, you or we proceed under this form of government, in my opinion. And I don't know that it's that much different than the way you would need to function if you had a similar sort of challenge. So I think I've explained a little bit of how the districts work here. That's why I told that story, because I figured I could throw in the district stuff and touch on communication. It's all about communication. It's about public service, customer service, and communication. And things change. Really, the administrative side doesn't. That's my observation. It hasn't significantly changed. What's changed, though, are the elected officials pretty regularly. And with each new group of elected official, you need to recognize what I just described, which is, we got to re-talk about priorities. We got to make sure that we're proceeding in the right way. A manager just can't say, well, that's the way we were funded and given direction, and we're going to keep going that way. That won't work. That doesn't work. That's when you begin to see that critical relationship I described to you up front begin to fall apart. So each community is different. You've got to know what will work and what won't work in your community. And certainly, if you think that can work, that sort of almost professional relationship between the legislative and the administrative body, then this is a form of government that I think you should consider. There's a question in here about schools versus fire. I touched on the fire, but schools are actually an interesting one. They're part of the municipal government. The schools, though they call themselves a district, are a department in the town. The town council doesn't hire the school superintendent, the school committee does, and it's structured, it's all clear in the charter. What the town council does, though, is it approves the school budgets, capital and operating. So there is absolutely a hierarchy there. The town school committee is elected. So at times I have seen conflicts created because the perception might be that the town doesn't have control over the schools, but it doesn't over operations. I mean, state law really lays out how that all works, and that's what's incorporated into our charter, or that reference, and the role of school committee to the superintendent play. But the town council absolutely approves their budget. So there needs to be really good communication there. Airport, in our case, is another one that the airport commissioners are different than many of our other boards, commissions, and committees, where they do have certain authorities, like to hire the airport manager. But they are more under our control. The airport commission isn't elected, it's appointed by town council. And certainly the airport manager, though she meets with her airport commission regularly, is part of my senior management team and considered a department head as well. So there's like little nuances depending on how you want to structure this and what works best. Coming from the old form into the new, certainly a lot of thought needs to be given to this issue as to how that transition will occur. I guess my advice to all of you is you're all really smart people. You wouldn't be where you are if you aren't. And don't just do what someone else says. And I'm not suggesting you would, but a lot of times they'll bring in an outside consultant. They'll kind of give you a canned package of this is the way that it'll work. But you know what? Nobody knows what will work better for Nantucket than you. And so at the end of the day, listen and take it under advisement, but come up with what you think will work best for you, because I've just seen too many canned packages brought in. And you end up spending more time. They're not bad. They give you the groundwork, but you're going to spend a lot of time tweaking someone else's package after, or take what they give you, develop what you want, and then implement that. Okay, just my observation of something you may want to do.
Yep.
There's absolutely, yes, Donna, please.
Thank you, Mark. Did you use anyone to help you create your charter? I have several questions. That's the
Yeah, I
first.
think
From
I'd have
what
to
you're
go back.
saying,
Yeah, I think they had both. I'd have to go back and look at who the consultant was back then, and I think they also, were working closely with MMA and trying to take whatever resources they could there as well.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah.
Could you share some major challenges that Barnstable was faced with during the transition?
Well, I think there's kind of a residual that still exists today. And it is, our boards, commissions, committees had a tremendous amount of authority under the selectman form of government. And many of those people who sat on our Sandy Neck Board or our DPW commission or whatever it might be, remained. And in some cases, they still remain. And so that what their authorities were then, and then what they became as it moved from a selectman administrator to a town council, town manager form of government, stayed with these committees. And I would have to say, even today at times, I'm having discussions with committees, and it's not like a board of health that has state statutory authority for whatever, whether those things that fall, conservation or even planning, it's the ZBA. It's not those. It's more the boards that existed that had authority, and then became advisory to the council and manager. That's a real challenge because you've got really critical, volunteers, citizens that are engaged. And I don't know that they fully understood. I don't know that anybody fully understands until it happens how that dynamic will work. So that's certainly one. I think that what I've said to you up front, which is really establishing legislative versus administrative, is a huge challenge. And many times I'll see, I've worked with two of my predecessors were legislators before they were, meaning they were state reps before they were, before they became town managers. The first person that came in was a town manager in a town manager, town council form of government. I think he was taking everybody down that kind of clear path of legislative and administrative. And then I think it swung back a little bit toward, and it was on the administrative side where I think it was questionable. I mean, I think the manager was engaged in a lot of policy establishment and more playing almost a role like a mayor would play. And if that's what you want, then that's what you should do. That's another type of form of government you should look at. That's not what I'm a manager. My background is engineering, law, MBA, MP. I mean, I got a lot of different stuff, but I'm a manager. If you ask me what I do, that's what I do. I'm a manager in everything I've done in life. So that's where I wanted to be. I wasn't looking to be an elected official. Wouldn't take a job as one unless I was, for some reason, compelled to do so. So I think that's really important for you to think about how that's going to work and make sure that that's best for Nantucket and make sure that everybody involved understands it. And, most of the time it's, for me, it's always been about communication. And I have 6 new counselors now, and I spend a lot of time talking with them about this, about, well, why are you going down to our division under natural resources and having a detailed conversation with an employee? Well, it's not the way that this works. And you may have done that when at some point in the past, but that's not the way that this form of government works. And so you really have to, in a professional way, make sure that you keep those lanes, where they should be, quite honestly. That's a challenge. I mean, that's a constant challenge. Communication is a constant challenge, like for whether it was just me and you, Donna, or whether it was us collectively, you know what I mean? That's probably the biggest challenge is communication. It's got to be constant. You've got to have it. It's a 50-50 relationship. So it isn't me telling anybody or it isn't them telling me. It's us talking to each other and listening. And when it's not working. So I don't know if that answers your questions. There's been lots of tough issues that, I mean, from an administrative side, but it's no different, I'm sure, than what your administrative staff tries to manage. I mean, our public and our counselors at times don't completely understand those lanes that I talk about. And like zoning, that's a town planning board, town council issue. We administer. Yet they'll come to us and say, well, you did this. And we'll say, no, we didn't. and it'll be completely missed. So again, you got to talk with your community and explain it a lot, and make sure that it's working the way you want it designed. And that's, to me, those are the challenges. They're not really technical challenges that I see. Once in a while they'll come up, but that's not really it. It's more like any organizational sort of challenges. But all about communication.
I think
Thank you. Communication is key.
Yes, oh, absolutely.
All right, Jill?
Hi, thanks for your time. I was watching you on TV just a few minutes ago, trying to
Oh,
jump on some of your meetings.
oh, okay. Was it good or was it not good?
That was great. You were talking about the water issue, actually.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah, yeah.
very helpful and interesting to see the difference. Like you're appearing before the council, the way we have it now, just the town manager sits with our select board as if they're kind of a 6-person body. I know they're not, but I'm just saying that's sort of how it's presented. So that made me think, what are the biggest differences, not from the from the perception of the public? So not so much in terms of how you run things and how you do things, we're going to have a history of that we would have to face. But if you are just a voter, a citizen, a property owner, a worker, somebody who lives in the community, how is it different for them when you make that switch?
I think for the citizen, we try to make it as seamless as possible. And what I mean by that is, most people don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time trying to understand how local government or any level of government works, and they tend to, they'll say that to you, and they'll view you as dysfunctional, when in fact it might not be. And so what we do is we take in information, a lot of it comes in through the website or over electronically, and but sometimes letters, sometimes verbal, and we try to direct it to the right place, and not spend a tremendous amount of time explaining it. I think when the public does engage, you have to anticipate the fact that they don't know the difference between what a town manager and what a council member is. And so it's really important that we do, meaning the 13 councilors and the town manager and his senior staff. And so when and that we present in that way, and make sure that people are aware where the responsibilities fall for whatever issue it is that they're asking for. Like many times the resident will believe that, well, if I go to a counselor and have him asked to put up a stop sign or fix the pothole, that'll make a big difference versus sending a work order to DPW. It doesn't. That's all I can tell you. We have a work order system that gets prioritized. We have a police, we have schools, we have DPW, we have Board of Health, we have Marine Environmental Affairs. Everybody kind of looks at the prioritization of what's being asked, and then we have a response time, and we have a system that tracks it, and and et cetera. So, but on the outside, on the outfacing side, our residents don't want to hear me explain this. They want to have whatever it is fixed. And explain my assessment, my tax assessment, whatever it might be. So we try to understand that and share with council and the public how it works. And we found that doing a lot of public communications outside of an immediate issue, like tax assessments or even property assessments and how that works and how the Department of Revenue plays into that. And it really doesn't matter, because if you don't follow the Department of Revenue process, you can come in with whoever you want, your senator, your elected councilor, it doesn't matter, because we have to follow the law. And we, believe it or not, we spend a lot of time on these issues with our public. So I guess every opportunity we try to communicate it with our public, but in general, we try to, behind the face, make it all work in a way that is as seamless as possible. Because you know how it is, most people want to show up and go enjoy, whether they live there or whether they're, visited.
All right, I think Curtis has a question.
Yeah, Mark, when I was at a couple of your meetings, and something that's pretty important here is that anyone can come and speak to the legislature, the town council, and 80% of our people or our taxes are paid by non-resident taxpayers who feel they don't have a voice. I have been telling them they can still go to a council meeting and stand up, sign the 3-minute log, and speak directly to the legislature. And I want to confirm that that's correct.
It is correct. It is. They ask you to identify yourself. They don't even ask if you're a resident when you go up there. And anybody can go to public comment and make comment. They can also go, depending on, whatever's before the council. If there's, for example, a public hearing that accompanies it, they can also comment there. Anybody can comment.
I'm gonna go to Tom and then to Caroline.
Hi, Mr. Ellis. Tom Dixon, Nantucket Select Board Member.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for joining us today. I just have a couple questions. I saw on your town website that you've done a charter change, or you, at least it's submitted. I didn't see whether it was passed as a home rule petition around term limits. I was just curious how that came about and what the outcome was.
Yeah, that was a while ago. I'd have to go back and I think they were trying to make, there were questions about whether people could leave the elected service and then come back. There's a 12-year limit on how long councilors can serve, and that would be 3-4-year terms, or obviously sometimes they're 2, sometimes they're 4. It varies. And and that was a while ago, though. That was certainly before I was in this office that happened. So I would have to say maybe even 20 years ago. That may have been 15, 20 years ago, because I've been downtown for 14.
Okay. I was curious how the council liaisons work. I saw, like, on your CPC, for example, that a counselor is a liaison. Are they a voting member? Like, I'm the select board rep on our CPC, and I am a voting member. So I was just curious how different that is for your form.
Well, unless a board, commission, or committee designates a council member, for example, as a voting member, they're not. They are an observer. They are a communicating conduit to the council. How do they work? It varies. It depends on the council, and it depends on the council leadership. In some cases, we very infrequently heard from our liaisons. In some years, and right now, we're very much hearing from our liaisons. So I think that, as I said several times now, it's all about communication. One of the primary roles of a liaison is to communicate. So I think that our government works best when you have your liaison communicating back, communicating from the council to the board, commission, committee, and then back from. And there's no better example of that in Barnstable than the school committee, where that has a very different structure than any other committee. They're elected. They're very much autonomous, except for a budget approval to the school department and through the superintendent. And using the liaisons constantly, for example, as the budget's being developed, Right now, they're doing a facilities plan, a future need. In the past, they've looked at demographic changes that the school department may be seeing, and therefore, budget increases that are significantly more than anybody would anticipate. Because, for example, we have a much greater percentage of ELL than except for DY, any other community in the area. And so that comes with a cost. And so to not know that and then have it come to budget floor is not the time to debate that. The time to debate that is August, September, October through the liaisons. That they're bringing back and they're saying, wow, we've seen it go from literally in Barnstable 3% to 5% to 7% to 13% to 15%. And with that comes, whether the student body is increasing or not, a lot of additional cost. And that's our community now. And so, trying to explain that by the superintendent on the budget floor isn't the right time to do it. So again, it comes back to they play a communication role for us. And I think when we function best, they are doing that.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense, Jeff. And I have one quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Last one. You mentioned before that your last election that you had, there's six new counselors, or there were six seats up. I'm just curious, from a political turnover standpoint, yourself as a manager, what are the kind of, just in the most general sense, the challenges of dealing with shifting political winds from a management perspective?
Oh, I think it's a tremendous challenge. I think with a shift in the elected, the policy setting body, the body that establishes the strategic plan for a community and its vision, its priorities. I think that you got to go right back to good communication and referencing those sorts of documents, specifically the strategic plan, and making sure that if it needs to be updated, it gets updated in time so that we can incorporate it into all that we're doing, specifically budget preparation. So that it could be I don't want to say disruptive, because the change that would lead you to believe that something other, it could be very productive. It could realign us with exactly what the community wants, but it comes with a lot of work and communication.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks. Mr. Ellis, I'm curious about how zoning works differently with the town council versus a town meeting, and if you could think about the changes that Barnstable experienced in the transition around that
I
generally.
think that's a really good question. I think there's a lot of confusion that goes with that. I think that in my time in this seat, it's been made very clear to me by town council that this is one of the primary areas of authority that they do have, and the reason that they have it is that ultimately the town council approves zone. So the way it works is somebody wants to do something, adopt a modification, let's say, to something in zoning. It comes in typically through, it can come in through staff, it can come in through the planning board, it can come to town council directly. Typically, town council goes to staff, legal and planning. They can have anybody, they can have our building commissioner who enforces it in the end. That's always a wise decision to kind of get to the person who's going to have to manage it. I would encourage that, certainly. Come to town manager and identify what they want to do. And then it goes to town council, to referral to planning board. Planning board reviews it, and planning board either approves it or doesn't approve it. But except in very specific instances, that is a recommendation that isn't binding to the council. The planning board then sends it back to council, and then the council debates and can modify, they can do what they want, but ultimately they have the authority over approving or not approving zoning. And so that's what the council has meant by saying to the manager, this is one of our areas of authority, clearly. I mean, you certainly will be called upon to advise, but that's your role. And I think the public, it's been very controversial in that many people from the outside will be upset with staff about a change in zoning and in fact, when it was several councils ago, those people aren't even there anymore. And so it can become quite controversial again, it comes back to what I think Jill asked me earlier, but, explaining that to the public. And they just don't get that. But at the end of the day, under this form of government, town council has the authority over zoning.
So there might be a situation where, since the zoning matter came in with prior town council people, that they're actually getting meted out by different town council people a year or two later.
Absolutely, and absolutely, or modified. I mean, right now they're looking at the form-based code and some of the things that have been adopted along Main Street and whether that document was the first time we adopted that along a section of Main Street in Hyannis, and now they're looking at it to see whether it needs to be modified, and each council will have that opportunity.
And would there be political situations where a town council person with one set of political interests or agenda items, they get something through and then a year or two later, modifications are made by different town council persons with different agendas? I'm just wondering if that gets inefficient, because a plan goes forth, but then it can kind of be pulled back again, and if that wastes resources of the town.
I mean, potentially it could, I guess. But on the other hand, when I look at the professional staff that manages the administrative side, and I look at the frequency that we meet at a minimum twice, we meet twice a month with our, legislative, administrative to do the business of the town. I think there is different than town meeting and a special meeting, let's say. You really do have a regular dialogue going on and the opportunity for people to participate. My observation, though, is there isn't a lot of participation. There is the opportunity to, and on a regular basis, but it kind of comes back to everybody's busy. And, unless they have a specific issue that they want to engage in, like wind brought everybody out. Zoning typically brings a lot of people out. Change, certain change will bring a lot of people out. Fee increases will bring people out. Assessments, valuation of property brought a lot of people out. But in general, the week-to-week business doesn't. So, I mean, we approved a $250 million capital budget this year. And I think we might have had public comment on a couple of items. Okay. So, it can vary. So is it inefficient to have zoning set up this way? That's a tough question to answer. I wouldn't be a reason that I would say to you that you should be fearful of going to a town manager, town council form of government.
Well,
Hi, Mark, thank you. Do you guys have a FinCom? Because I know that's not typical of. Do you guys have a FinCom? I know that's not typical of town council manager. Or
We
how's
do.
that
We've
advisory?
we've got a comprehensive financial advisory committee.
Yeah.
And they're advisory to the town council and town manager. Because as I was describing earlier, as we transitioned from the older form of government where these boards, commissions, committees had actually a lot of authority in many cases. Many of them stayed. FinCom is obviously a critical board. And they became comprehensive financial advisory. They became advisory to town council. Because the town manager and finance director developed the budget, they became directly advisable and meet regularly with the town finance director, and then ultimately produce a report both for capital and operating budget that we present, and it coincides with our presentation of the capital and operating budgets before town council, gets incorporated into our budget book and budget documents. And certainly the council can call upon them to look into other issues, whether it be like our comprehensive wastewater management planning, or private roads, or impacts of short-term rentals, or whatever it might be. They'll put many issues for advice from FinCom, or it's not even FinCom, it's CFAC, they call it in Barnstable. And then they render advice both to management and council. That's how it works.
Right.
Yep.
All right, Donna?
Mark, it's Donna again.
Hi, Donna.
Hi. The non-voting taxpayers, I'm sure you have them.
Yes.
And I wonder, other than participating in the town council meetings, how else do you communicate with them, relate to them? How are they involved in the government, or are they? Maybe that's the question. Are they?
They are involved in the government. There are some boards, committees, commissions that, because again, we've got almost 300 active members on those boards, committees, commissions. And in some cases, it states that they have to be a year-round Barnstable resident, okay, for example. And in some cases, it may state that they have to live in a particular village. Everyone can be different. It can be very specific, or it can be very broad. In some cases, it doesn't state any of that. They're a taxpayer. So I think there are opportunities to participate in the community. With 7 villages, our village associations are really important. Kind of indirectly, they're not a formal aspect of government, but certainly they're engaged, and our village associations, as well as the many other subsections of that in town, are engaged, and through their counselor, they will bring whatever the issues are, and they're the issues of the people who own property here. So that's how we do it. And it's not, it can vary, quite honestly. And, participation on a committee, you got to go in and look at the details of what it says about, like in Hyannis, I have a board I appoint. It's not a town council appointed, but it's very specific. When we took over the water, private water company, I was DPW director then. And, the town manager created a water board for Hyannis. And on the water board, there's 3 residents throughout the village of Hyannis and 2 businesses. So you're a business owner. You don't have to live in Barnstable. And that was set up in an ordinance, and off we went. And so when I fill those slots, I got to see who's filling what. So again, you got to look into the detail of what you're trying to establish. But many of our business owners don't live here, yet our businesses are greatly impacted by what happens in Hyannis. So it was believed at the time that that's the way that should be structured. So, yeah,
Thank you, Mark.
but it takes a lot of thought. You really, that's why I say you guys know best. I mean, Nantucket, and that's why having somebody from some institution, whether it's a Collins Center or whether it's MMA or whatever, yeah, that's great. And give us that outline, and we can learn from, experience. But at the end of the day, I would highly recommend that you take it all under advisement, and then you produce what's best for your community, and then know you're going to have to adapt it, because you're going to just find stuff. And make sure you have a clear process on how to adapt, how to make a charter amendment like it was brought up earlier, if that's what makes sense, okay?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, oh, of course.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Other questions from the committee?
A quick one.
Sure.
Mr. Ellis, I'm wondering how the precincts get picked out. You mentioned that each village has its own counselor, but there's more than, and there's 7 villages, but there's more than 7 counselors, correct?
By population, the precincts are set up. So like Hyannis has 4, Centerville has a couple, Katuitt has 1, and Osterville has 1. So it's a population-based delineation.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, I have a quick question too. It may not be quick. What mechanisms does the average citizen have to petition legislation from the council?
Well, there are certain, but we get petitions all the time, and it depends on what you're trying to do and how many citizens who are registered voters. That is an area where you do get into that issue of do they live here or not. They could petition council directly. Most of the time, what happens is they bring the issue to the town council and it goes under discussion, and many times the council refers it to staff to come back with like an alternatives analysis, and then it goes through an evolution of consideration. I think to me, that's one of the strengths of having the town manager form of government is town manager, town council form of government is typically with it's going to come a fairly strong group of professional managers that are going to do a lot of this work for you, and it really removes from the kind of, again, the tactical level, the operation level, any authority of your elected body, and it delegates it to, in theory, a professional management. And that's going to come back to you all, because one of the primary roles that the council plays is to select the manager. So if you select somebody that isn't a professional manager, I don't know what the outcome of that would be. I am. So that's been my background. And so I think that that's the scenario that can be most effective.
Any
I
other
don't know if that-
questions?
I don't know if that answered your question adequately, but
No, I think that's good for me.
yeah.
Any other questions from the committee?
I do.
All right, one more. We'll get to it.
What happens if a long-term project goes over budget? And it's required that, more money is asked for. How does that process play out?
So that's my responsibility initially. And it's my responsibility through my staff to be tracking the budgets, having prepared the original estimates and then watching it as we progress through. If in the event we identify, or even we get to bid and we find that the bids come in, much greater than what was estimated and what was approved by town council, for example, at capital budget time, we sit down with leadership, and it's really important that this back and forth be occurring. This can't be oh geez, I don't want the council to know. I have to find a way to make this work. That's not the way this works. You have to have an open, honest dialogue with your council leadership and town manager, and you discuss these items when they arise, whether it's an operating budget increase, whether it's a capital budget increase. So, and then you decide, okay, what are the options? Can you value engineer it? Can you look at coming up with a different project, rescope it? Can you just rebid it and see what the results are? Can you come into town council and ask for additional funding? Can you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And you go through a very logical discussion and you come up with what the best plan is, and it can be different for everything. Because, for example, if you're trying to secure state funding and there's a timeline for when you have to have the total project appropriations in place, or else you're going to get bumped off the list because it's got to be in place by, June 30th. you got to bring that factor to the table as well. And you very logically go through that discussion. Ultimately, if the decision is to go back to town council and ask for an additional appropriation, you need to do that. And so if it were a $3 million project and you got your bid in and the lowest bid came in at 3.8, and so you're going to need, but when you look at contingencies and everything, you're at a 4 million, not a $3 million project. You got to go back in and ask for $1 million. And maybe you're going to pursue a grant, but for me to sign that contract for that $3.8 million project, even though I might be able to get a grant, I got to get the whole amount approved. So I would go back to town council. I don't have the authority to do that. I have to bring that to whoever the presiding officer, the president of the council is. They have to agree to put that on the agenda. And most of the time, well, if it's a borrowing, it's all the time, but depending on what you're doing, transfers from existing funds, like available funds or something, might be a one-time. Most budgetary items are 2 reads. So we have 2 council meetings a month. So basically you bring it in as a first read, and then it could be potentially voted by the second read. What we do in between is now we advance a complete explanation to the full council, so they have all the information at the time of the vote, right at that first read, so they can ask questions in between. So by the time they get to that second read and potential vote, hopefully they've got enough information to make a decision. In the meantime, I can't award. I don't have that authority. I can't exceed, if I don't have the budget to sign into a contract, I can't proceed.
Okay.
Yeah, operating budgets are different, obviously. If you find that your police department, because you're shorthanded and you've had to backfill with overtime, and so you're coming into the last quarter of your fiscal year and you've got a $250,000 shortage going into it. Basically, I have to plan 2 ways. Number one, I go through the same communication process with leadership, and I identify what we're going to need to close the fiscal year. I also plan to enact cuts. So I'm running them concurrent because I cannot assume that the legislative body will approve any additional budget requests that I might make. And I don't want the council to feel as though they're, in my opinion, a rubber stamp for what I come in with, certainly, or that they are forced to do something that for some reason they may not want to do. So basically, I begin from a management standpoint to run multiple scenarios. Those are just 2, maybe there are other, but I may ask to transfer money from available budget from DPW, who didn't have to do overtime, and they've got remaining. The scenario actually happened this year for us. But so it's within the existing operating budget for FY24, but it's coming from available funds from Public Works. They didn't have to do the overtime. We just got less work done because we're only running at 70% in Public Works. That's another option, but never assume. You bring these issues to leadership. Leadership will advise as to whether they want to consider bringing it forward. And then you go forward from there. And it's really, that's when it works best.
Oh,
Suzanne Girardi, Mr. Ellis, in Barnstable, on the various committees and boards, how are those people appointed? Are they by the administration, town administrator, or is that elected, or are they appointed by the town council?
So, the only elected that I'm aware of are the school committee and the town clerk and town council. So then it becomes by ordinance, it'll state, in the town code, it'll state who appoints. And the majority of the committee, boards, commissions, and committee members are appointed by the town council. And under the charter, it lays out that the town council establishes an appointment committee, and the appointment committee then elects its own chair. But that appointment committee, made up of town councilors, goes through a process to make those decisions relevant to who populates those committees. In some cases, as I described for the Hyannis Water Board, it's a town manager appointed committee. So then I really have to look into more detail as to whether that ordinance states that not only do I appoint, but I have to bring to town council for ratification, or do I just appoint? And so it can be different, and it is different in every circumstance. But the majority of the 40 boards, commissions, committees that we have are town council, so it's our elected officials, and the town council establishes an appointments committee. The appointment committee comes forward with a resolve back to town council, and the council as a whole votes it. That's the way it works. Typically 2 reads, but they have a rule. Another thing you might want to look at on the town council website is the council rules, because they have rules as to how the town council functions. And there is the opportunity to ask for, to waive the rules and do it in one vote for certain things. There are certain things under Mass General Law that you can't do that for, like borrowing money, for example. So you got to know all that, and that's why at every meeting, the manager needs to be there with the town council, and the town attorney needs to be there to advise. And many times there's a constant dialogue back and forth about those rules and about what applies to whatever measure the council is considering that's before them. And why did it was a real, just an observation you brought up, that our managers used to sit with the town council. And when I was assistant town manager, a new council came in and they said, this is a legislative body. This isn't an administrative body. And the town charter is clear that there's a separation. And it's confusing to people to have the town manager up here leading a discussion when in fact the president of the town council and the sitting town council are the ones that are supposed to be discussing it. And so they asked us to sit in the audience. And so I've never sat up on the dais with the town council. I've only sat, before them, but I do attend every meeting unless they excuse me. And that's the way it works. Same with the town attorney.
All right, Curtis?
My question is the town attorney a staff member full-time, or is that contracted such as we do?
No, it's a full-time. We have 4 attorneys in Barnstable, 3 that work directly under us, 1 that works with our school department. The school superintendent is in the process of potentially looking, because I think their attorney is leaving, and she's going to relook at how she wants to do it in the future. We could do it either way. It would be a discussion with town council leadership, but we have found the standing need to have in-house counsel, and we also, in special areas, bring in outside counsel. Because our staff truly, our legal staff truly is general counsel. And I would point out to you, though, you gotta be very attentive to the role of the town attorney if you go in that direction, because at times, I think it might be the most difficult job in the town, because at times, even though I hire the town attorney, has to be ratified by town council. Any director of a department has to be ratified by town council, though I appoint, and that's part of the way our ordinances are structured. But in the case of the town attorney, you could really have 2 managers, meaning the council, and especially the president of the town council and the town manager, because there are absolutely cases where the president of the town council needs to, interact with the town attorney, and I do not need to be there. It is a legislative matter. It is not a administrative matter. So I think it's important to think about that, because in management, serving 2 masters is a no-no. And so I can see it at times with our attorneys. They tend to be very, cognizant of that. Okay. It's a tough role.
Mr. Gillette?
Mr. Ellis, my name is Ted Giletti. I'm a member of the public. can you talk about what kind of audit process you have for governance processes for yourself, or all of the bodies reporting to you, and equally the town council? And, okay, thank you.
Yeah, say again, what type of process? I'm sorry.
Audits.
What type of audit process?
Check and balance or? what do you
Oh,
mean?
okay, so, sure. Well, obviously, we have annual financial audits that are required as part of our charter and, you know, we have to have our finances certified annually. We also after discussion with town council from time to time, and I have a professional services line item in my budget, if they feel as though an audit of a particular department needs to occur, police, it can be anything, planning, my office, whatever, they believe appropriate, we would go forward, and we have in the past brought in outside counsel, or outside management consultant, to perform an audit. And, they've been both financial, they've been operational, type audits. So we've had both of them done. And, but it's not mandated. The finance is, but everything else is not.
Sorry, so financial audit is required annually? Is that?
Yes. Yeah, I can get you, and again, if you have a list of things, you're like, hey, we want to see how a charter change happened, we want to see how your financial audits, whatever you want to see, if you zip that off to me, I'll package it all up and get it back to you, and I'll even make available my directors or our attorney or whomever, I can introduce you to the president of the council, and you can talk with them. I think we're a wonderful like case study for y'all as you're thinking about this, thinking about whether you want to do this or not.
Thank you.
All right, Tom?
Yeah, we just know if, for anybody who's interested, last Wednesday, we had a presentation from the town auditor, or excuse me, the auditor that we had for the town, and then a presentation from the finance department on that. That's very interesting.
Yep.
Any further questions? We made Mr. L speak for about an hour, so see if there's any more, and if not. All right, I think the interrogation is over, so.
Thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much for your time. It was extraordinarily helpful.
Thank you so much, Mark.
And I'm glad you and
Oh,
Curtis
cool.
connected to set this up.
Yeah, anytime
Thank
too,
you.
just by however you want, email or, my cell phone is 508-509-7210. I know that you've got a formal process, but hey, questions come up, more than happy to share. And,
Come over and have lunch someday.
I
Yeah.
know Libby said, I have 6 kids and, many of them were swimmers. And by the way, you guys have a great swim program over there. And,
do.
I went over during a swim meet one time and, watched the meets, but, Libby always invites us over and it's usually in September. And so maybe I'll do that. It's the managers, Cape managers meetings, but, I think I've only been to Nantucket maybe a half dozen times in my whole life, believe it or not.
About time.
Yeah.
Because we go to Hyannis every other day.
I bet you do. So my parents are off Cape, north of Boston, so I tend to run north a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you again
Thank
for
you.
the time, Mark.
Thank
and,
you.
if wanna
Thank you
hang out
so
with
much.
us, you're more than
Thank you,
welcome,
thanks.
or you can be free to go.
Okay, again, call on me when you need me.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
All right, moving on. I know we had some scheduled difficulties with the potential guest speaker, so we're still working on getting someone from representative town meeting to come speak. So that brings us to the next point on the agenda,
I'll send you right now. Yeah, right here.
is just a discussion on committee direction and next steps. I know we do have a meeting next week that I think this was the primary agenda item for. I know Joe wanted to participate in this discussion, but if anyone has any thoughts on that on the committee. feel free.
Will Joe be setting up an agenda for next week? You think?
Yes,
Well,
We're meeting next week, Jeff? What we said?
it's on the schedule still. I think that was part of the,
yeah.
Discussion
This was
for
an
now.
interim because we were supposed to be on the 15th and couldn't, so
Yeah.
we are scheduled for next week. Well, I think it would be helpful to pull together our thoughts after we chatted and thought and raise questions after this presentation.
I know we had scheduled this for a different day. This was the only date that Mr. Ells was
Yeah.
available, so we wanted to get
Jill, what do you have to say?
What's the date for next week?
May the 29th.
Me?
What time?
What do you have to say? You've been
Three.
very quiet. What do you think
Oh, you mean about Barnstable?
about the whole discussion? Questions? Do you have any questions?
Yeah, but there are things we can probably address later. There's nothing I have to like know the answer to now. It's very like tedious stuff.
Yeah.
But with Barnstable, I think it's an interesting, that was interesting to talk to him and to watch their meeting, which I spent a little time doing, and but they are quite different. I mean, their budget is a lot bigger, and they have to deal with their surrounding areas. So there's probably a lot more involvement with other communities for them. So how they do it, I can tell, is going to be really different from how we do it. And he kept saying that over and over again too. But, I think we have a little bit more maybe personalized system as it is now. But, again, they're more than twice as big as we are. So
Well, I think if people want to take some time and digest all that, when we get together next week, we can have
Yeah,
more of a
maybe that's,
conversation for everyone.
and certainly if there are any comments or questions, feed them into Joe so we can make sure we
Yeah.
create an agenda for that.
Passing it. Absolutely.
yeah, it was super helpful.
Any other public comment or questions? From our dedicated attenders? Cool. All right. So we're still planning on meeting next week. We'll get that agenda out and circulated. So with that, there's nothing else on the agenda. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Actually, somebody has a
Oh,
hand up.
Megan,
Megan
sorry about
Perry?
that. Sorry, Megan, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. What might be the best avenue for the public to get involved with this committee and or send in questions, comments, anything like that? Is there one person to send that to?
We've been typically setting into our chair, Joe Grouse.
Mhm.
But if you have stuff immediately, and I'll get a better answer for that question for you, Megan. If you send stuff to Maureen Coleman as well, she's good at getting that information to us.
So send it to Maureen with attention to you guys?
Yes.
Awesome.
I'll get a
Okay.
better for that and up and posted for everyone in the
Or
next.
come next week at 3:00.
The funny thing is I have this full-time job that gets in the way of a lot of meeting times at 3 p.m., hence the on Zoom call, which I super duper appreciate. But I believe me, I would love to be at every meeting in person. I feel like that's a full-time job of its own.
Yeah, and we'll get somewhere to put up, we'll have Florencia get someone's email address put up there for people to get there on the town website, so we'll get that squared away.
Okay. And then I'm just curious, because it was mentioned at town meeting, would this group be talking about something similar to Article 92 in the future? Or is that something that you would ever consider discussing and or putting on as an agenda item?
So I think the short answer, Megan, is yes. I think the discussion at town meeting and that vote at town meeting was clear that we have to at least entertain it as an agenda item for discussion, and we're certainly happy to let you know when that gets scheduled.
That would be fantastic. I'm sure you all have my email. If you don't, let me know.
I know I do, so I can track you down for sure.
Thanks, Jeff.
No problem.
Move adjournment.
Wait, anyone else?
Oh.
Done with Miss Megan? Just double check. All right,
Move adjournment.
Second.
all right. Curtis,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
vote. Caroline,
Aye.
Jeff, I, Jill.
Hi.
All right. Thanks everyone for the time, and we'll
Thank
see
you.
you next week. Go enjoy the nice weather.
Are we off the screen?